The South Carolina Hall of Fame was founded in Myrtle Beach in 1973 to recognize and honor contemporary and past citizens who have made outstanding contributions to South Carolina's heritage, history, and progress.
David Drake was an enslaved African American in Edgefield, South Carolina, during the first 3/4 of the 19th century. He's known today for the magnificent pots that he made, the size of the pots that he made, and he wrote poems on some of his pots while the clay was still damp. This is important because at that time it was a crime, really, to teach slaves to read or to write.
The Edgefield district of South Carolina was the center of a vibrant pottery industry in the early 1800s. The Landrum and Drake families ran a kiln at Pottersville, just north of the town of Edgefield. Dave the Potter was born into slavery in 1801 and was first owned by Harvey Drake.
Probably the guy who taught him how to make pots. And the Drake family was a very forward-thinking household, so it was probably in their household that he learned to read and write.
In South Carolina before the Civil War, it was against the law to teach a slave to read and write. Nevertheless, Dave managed to become literate. It was a life-changing event, one that began to open the world and its mysteries to him. Dave was a master potter, and many of his stoneware creations were huge, some holding 25 to 40 gallons. Sometimes at the stage of attaching the handles, he inscribed his name, Dave, in the wet clay. Soon he was writing much more.
Put every bit all between. Surely this jar will hold 14. This noble jar will hold 20. Fill it with silver, then you'll have plenty.
They're wonderful couplets for the most part. There's usually a kind of wit and humor to them. For example, one that he wrote was, "Oh, the moon and the stars, hard work to make big jars."
In the 1830s, Dave worked for the Landrum family. Sometime in the 1840s, he became the property of Lewis Miles. From then until the Civil War can be considered Dave's golden age.
And that's when he does most of his work. He was writing regularly on jugs and jars, especially large jugs and jars. If the pot was exceedingly wide, it had a nice shape, then that was the one that he would bless, per se, with his with the thought or with the poem.
Dave belongs to Mr. Miles, where the oven bakes and the pot biles.
After the war, Dave adopted the surname Drake and continued to be known in Edgefield as a pottery turner. He had lost or injured a leg, possibly from a railroad accident, and he needed help to make his pots. Dave died sometime in the 1870s. Pottery making is a grueling process which involves digging, grinding, liquefying, filtering, drying, milling, turning, firing, and glazing.
He was in such a terrible situation. He had to make pots every day of his life. I mean, it's drudgery, honestly. And he turned it into something extremely creative, and he managed to put his wit and his intelligence into those jars.
I think a natural beauty evolves out of something that's done repetitively. Pottery, of course, is a repetitive process. You would have to make thousands and thousands of pots. There's just a grace that you acquire when doing something over and over again. I think a flair even. You look back in history and you see this guy in a time when it was illegal to teach a slave to read and write, and he wants to leave his mark on the world. I mean, he was against the grade. He was obviously very, very good as a potter, but good and then talented and then bold put them all together to make rather unique. I mean, there's nothing else like this in the United States.
And he left something for us that we wonder at and we value and we appreciate. That was the most dangerous part, was that he signed them. There was no question about who wrote that poem, who made that pot, who could read, who could write, when it was not really the thing he was supposed to be doing. And he made sure we knew his name.